Hey, I'm going to go over all the different parts we can use to, I imagine you're going to need to use for this Facebook integration. And the main way that the way that we're going to bring leads into the product is a thing that we call workflows. So you can find those workflows are in settings and then workflows. And I've got one I was recently working on here. So basically, when this workflow is run, you can assign the tag Facebook marketing to the contact. Then with workflows, you can do all kinds of other things. You can set the source, you can set the category. So let's set the source to Facebook, and we need to add a tag first. So let's just say Facebook. So now when this workflow gets run for a contact, it will assign the tag Facebook marketing, and it'll also set the source to the contact. We can do lots of other things like send texts, send emails, notifications, run webhooks to other services, do all kinds of other things, to-do plans, autoresponders, a series of emails. But this is the one becoming the core of our product. So there's in a workflow, there's a thing called a trigger, and a trigger is basically a webhook. So if we go in and enable triggers for this workflow, we get a unique URL, a trigger URL for this URL. And the trigger contains all of the duplicate handling. What do? Do we update the confirmation, contact information? Do we update it but don't run the workflow? Do we don't update the contact at all, but we still run the workflow, or we do nothing? We don't update the contact and we don't run the workflow. So the good part about using workflow triggers is you don't have to put this logic into your API calls. You don't have to check for duplicate. You don't have to add the contact. You don't have to dedupe. And the user is handling those duplicate rules within here. So none of that logic has to be written on your side on the Facebook or integration side. So it's really nice part and the quickest way for our users to get data in. We usually tell users this is the best way to get data into our system. So this URL, it becomes unique. If something were to happen and you wanted to regenerate this, like you are changing programmers or some kind of compromise, you gave this out to too many people, or we're getting spam somehow, you can regenerate it. And it warns you that it's going to break your integrations. So we can regenerate it. And then we know the URL is changed. You'll notice here I'm in QA. This is our testing service. So just like the normal product is at www.allclients.com, but our white label partners could have a series, any URL in here. So we have to keep that in mind when we're developing this. So there might be 25 different versions of this, and based on the URL that you're in the product, this URL will be different. So we can close that. I'm just going to copy that anyway. So then when a lead comes in there, all these things will be done. And let me show you. I'm going to put this URL in the browser. I'm just going to paste it in. And what this takes us to is it finds that there's no fields coming in. So it takes us to a help page. And then it has all the instructions that you need. So to get data into the trigger, you do a form post, an HTTP form post, and then you add form fields. So it's not JSON, it's not in the query string, but you add individual form fields. And you will get a result in JSON. And here are the fields that and help that goes along with each field that can come in. So there's notes you can add. There's all kinds of custom fields, phone numbers, name, address, first name, last name. If you don't have a first name or last name, you can put a full name, and the system will try to split it into first and last name. So if the source has a name as one field, you put it into one field. If you have two, you put it in first name and last name. And then everything takes care of itself. So that's workflows. And we do need to figure out, well, let's go back. Now we can go to the API, and I'll show you, and that's at developers.allclients.com/API. And so the things that you might need to use here are under contact functions. We might want to, actually, this is the old way. If you wanted to do it, you'd have to add a contact, search for a contact, and then add notes, add flags. But luckily, we have to do this all through workflows, and it's much easier from a programmer point of view. So there are functions that you might want to call for getting a list of action sets. So these are in programming functionality, these are called action sets because that's what we called them at first, but now they're called workflows. So we need to handle that. So basically, in all of the API documentation, everything, it's considered action sets, but to the end user, they're called workflows. And then here's each API function tells you the URL, and it's the same kind of thing. You do an HTTP form post to these fields. You can change your response type if you want JSON to come back. You put in an account ID and an API key. So I'll show you where to get these later. And basically, if you get the action set, it gives you a list of the action sets in either XML or jQuery or JSON if you put JSON in there. And then if you need more details on an action set, once you know from your list, you can get a little bit more details. And it also shows you exactly what's going to happen. So a verbose description is just a detailed explanation that you could show the user in like a bulleted list. So let's show you where to get this API key and this account ID. If we go back into the product, and go into settings, there's under advanced, there's a thing called API settings. And there's an account ID and an API key. And just like the trigger URL, you can regenerate it if you need to. But that is the account ID and API key that you put in to the API. So I see we're going to have basically, to connect it up, we're going to somehow connect Facebook ads to a workflow. So you're going to have to somehow list the Facebook ads and then pick a list of workflows and then connect them. I think we may have to do some work to the API, including being able to enable a trigger because triggers are off by default. And then we need to be able to show you the trigger URL in the API if it's not already. So there's definitely some work where you're going to have to find things that you need from me to add to the API, as well as any other things. And we can make changes to the API pretty easily. But what we're kind of imagining is under settings like advanced, there's going to be Facebook integration, just like we have SendGrid integration right now, where you put your SendGrid API key. There might be Facebook integration, and when we go here, maybe it opens up an iframe here, and then is the integration server that you guys have created for Facebook. So the authentication for Facebook, being able to link a Facebook ad to a workflow, and also being able to delete one or clear it. So that's kind of how I'm seeing all of this working, and I'll in the email I'm going to have a Word doc that will show you the different links to all these things so you can find them. But that's just, hopefully that helps get things started. I thought a video would work better than a doc. So hopefully this is helpful for you. All right, thanks.